Hi everyone, my name is Matt Pham. Today I'll be discussing language. Language is such a powerful tool that everyone uses to communicate. I'll be discussing the ways in which institutions can censor language and how some people use language to discriminate against others. In this presentation, I'll be discussing what censorship and linguistic profiling are. Then I'll give an example of each to illustrate how they are being used in today's society. First, I'll be discussing censorship. Censorship is the suppression of speech, public communication, or information. Censorship can be conducted by governments, private institutions, and other controlling bodies. There are several types of censorship, either political, religious, or education. However, today I'll only be discussing political censorship. Political censorship exists when a government attempts to conceal, distort, or falsify information that its citizens receive by suppressing out political news that the public receives through specific news outlets. Governments possess the power of the army and the police, which they can use to enforce the compliance of journalists. Now I'll be discussing linguistic profiling. Linguistic profiling is the practice of identifying the social characteristics of an individual based on auditory or sound cues, in particular dialect and accent. This theory was introduced by Professor John Baugh. It was developed to explain the discriminatory practices in the housing market based on the speaker's voice alone. Oftentimes, linguistic profiling is linked with racial discrimination. In June 2020, the Chinese government imposed a national security law in an attempt to rule out the opposition in Hong Kong. The citizens of Hong Kong have been conducting anti-government protests. However, this has not been too successful as police officers arrest Jimmy Lai, who runs a pro-democracy newspaper. He was arrested and charged under the national security law. He is not the only journalist to be arrested. In this, we can see how the government is censoring its citizens. They are arresting journalists that are trying to promote pro-democracy. Now, I'll give an example of linguistic profiling in the housing market. There are discrepancies between white English speakers and black English speakers of African American vernacular English. Research has shown that a black applicant in the US is more than twice as likely to be denied a home mortgage as a white applicant. They found that even before meeting loan officers and going through the entire process, that they would be denied based on just the phone call alone. For example, Carlet Duffy, a black homeowner, tried to initially appraise her home, but it was vastly undervalued at $125,000 and $110,000. She paid for a market analysis, which had concluded that her house would be at least listed for $187,000. She was unsure why her house was valued so low. In her third appraisal, she kept all communication to email only. Then she had a white friend pose as her brother for the third appraisal, and the value jumped up to $259,000. This is just one example of many of linguistic profiling. In conclusion, there are times where censorship can possibly be necessary. However, as we've seen, political censorship can be harmful to its citizens. And as we just discussed, linguistic profiling is often tied to racial discrimination, which has no place in our current society.